Coventry City Football Club, CCFC, have lost their battle with Coventry City Council at the High Court in Birmingham yesterday. CCFC claimed that a loan of £14 million from the City Council amounted to unlawful state aid, but the judge said the council had successfully defended that claim. BBC Coventry and Warwickshire's Clive Eakin was there for us and summarised what had happened.
CCFC had only one strategy for sustaining the football club, according to Justice Hickenbottom, and that was to acquire the arena at a knockdown price. When this failed, there was no plan B. The judge said CCFC deliberately cranked up pressure on ACL and the council by going on a rent strike and so putting the arena's management company in trouble. CCFC also threatened to move or even liquidate the club. The council, therefore, took the action it did to protect its interests in ACL, and the authority was also motivated by its concerns over CCFC's commitment to the football club, which, although in hindsight proved unfounded, were reasonable at the time. The judge says deteriorating relations between the two sides was only of limited relevance to his ruling, but he observed while discussions were going on, both sides, but especially CCFC, were understandably intent on protecting their own interests. He also concluded the council wasn't in breach of European law on state aid.
Fairly forthright comments then from the judge. Clive Eakin reporting there. After the judgment, the club's chief exec, Tim Fisher, told us they're planning to take the case to the Court of Appeal.
We will apply for leave to actually appeal the judgment, and I suspect that this will be heard in the Court of Appeal in front of 3 very senior judges. We believe that there are substantive errors with regard to the facts and the law that is presented in the judgment.
The leader of Coventry City Council, Anne Lucas, joins me live in the studio this morning. Morning, Anne. Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
Your reaction, first of all, to the judgment. I presume you must be pleased, although this isn't without cost to the taxpayer, is it, of course, all of this?
Look, there aren't any winners in this. We begged them not to go through this process, but if somebody takes out a judicial review, you have to defend yourself. Yes, there's been a cost to the taxpayers, and as I understand it, the judge will award costs on Friday, and we're hoping we recover full costs. I mean, his judgment was very robust. He said their case was invalid on every single point, as indeed the first judge did. Now, we want the football club back at the arena. I mean, if people remember, they walked away from the arena. They could come back any time, as far as I'm concerned.
We'll come back to the future in a second. Let me just talk about the case yesterday, and I just wonder that Tim Fisher came out yesterday saying they're going to appeal. First of all, I mean, I presume they've been given the leave to appeal, have they, or is that still to be granted?
No, I'm not sure that they have. I think you have to ask for leave to appeal.
That's right. It has to be granted by the judge of that case, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that that's happened yet.
OK, so let's assume that it does. Let's assume they get the right to appeal. How do you feel about that? That must be disappointing you, really.
I think it'll be lengthy, pointless, costly, and Look, isn't it time for us to move on and try as best we can to mend relationships? My door's always been open. I went down to see Joy Seppuler last November and said to her, my door's always open. I mean, I was incredibly disappointed to find that she'd come up to Coventry last month. I mean, strangely, she was about half a mile from my house. Could have popped in for a cup of tea, would have been very welcome. And I didn't know until it was over.
The club want to come back to the stadium, but they want to own the stadium. Would you accept offers now? I mean,
no. I mean, look,
because they're not going to come back, are they? So I know you're sitting there and you're in a way, you're saying, oh, look, I'm all being open and forgiving, and I want them to come back and all the rest of it. But you know as well as I do, they don't want to come back on the terms that they were there before. So unless you're prepared to say, OK, we're going to look at offers, and I'm talking realistic offers. I'm not talking knockdown bargain basement price. I'm talking about realistic offers for the value of the asset and all the rest of it. You wouldn't accept. Why wouldn't you accept those if you want to get them back?
Well, because the stadium, the arena. Remember, we're not talking a football ground here. We're talking an arena. It's not up for sale, freehold. It just isn't.
When it was the difference being that there are associated businesses around an arena and it does different things. Just
look, the arena is open 365 days a year, with an extremely busy hotel, casino, exhibition, conference, weddings. I mean, you name it, it's happening there. 365. Football stadium is maybe 30 events a year. Very important, incredibly important, and we want them back.
I mean, not only financially, but they kind of make sense. Otherwise, as I've said before, you have the conference centre with the biggest lawn in the history of conference centres. If you don't play football there, don't you? Really,
well,
it kind of makes sense of it all as well, doesn't it?
It's completely bonkers. And look, it came out in the court case, so I'm not talking out of turn here, but my understanding is that some over 12 months ago more, a rental deal was accepted, hands were shaken on it. Next day, no, we can't do it. Seppala won't have it. Now, my understanding is that Joyce Seppala is the boss, makes the decisions, and my door's open to her. Now, I can talk to her, but the negotiations, if they really want to come back, have to be done with ACL, and overtures will have to be made to them.
But whatever negotiations, buying the stadium is not going to be on the table now. It's not going to be on the table in the future.
Oh, look, who knows what's going to be happening in the future? Never say never, I can't say
All right,
that.
it's not on the table now.
No, it isn't.
You're not prepared to sell.
Freehold sale is not on the table.
Okay, what do you see the future looking like then? Because it seems to me two intractable positions, because you're on the one hand saying, look, we don't want to sell the freehold of the stadium, and people will listen to that, and some will say for perfectly valid reasons you don't want to do that. The club are saying they want to own that because that makes sense to them as a business then, and there are people who will say that makes perfect sense as well. How do you get those two? How do you square the circle with those two? And how do you get those two to work together?
Well, I think what you have to do, and my understanding is that Mr. Fisher, although Mr. Fisher says it's not Miss Seppala saying, that possibly
what does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, I'm sorry, Miss Seppala is the boss.
Okay.
It's very clear, and any decisions are made through her, not through people who purport to speak on her behalf.
So what does the future look like then? How do we square that circle? How do we get those two intractable positions to become one, to work, to make it happen, so that we can get what the fans want, which is the football club back at the ground?
Well, I'll tell you how you could get the football club back at the ground or into Coventry. If the Football League, who have the power to enforce, actually did what they could do, then they'd have to come back to Coventry. And they've said before now they'll do that. I don't know a journalist who can get hold of the Football League. Maybe you'd like to have a go, Shane.
I did once. I got hold of the chairman of the Football League. It took us about 2 months, but we did once, yeah. And he would only do a pre-recorded interview. But yeah, maybe that is perhaps something we should look at as well in the near future. As a final point, you're now looking at defending an appeal, which I presume you will defend as robustly as the others.
Yeah, I do.
What about
hope they don't.
The cost of all this? Any idea of a figure yet?
Well, it's gone into six figures, but while we're waiting for the judge to make an award on costs, I'm not going to go further than that. But look, it's a lot of money. It's taxpayers' money. But we have to defend what's ours.
Listening to that, Tim Fisher, Chief Exec of Coventry City Football Club, joins us on the line. Morning, Tim.
Morning, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate your time this morning. I've had a text from Sean, which kind of preempts exactly what I was going to ask you as well as a first question. Let me put it in his words. He said, can you ask Mr. Fisher, if the club are appealing, why, if they don't want the RICO and they've moved on and they've started to plan for a new ground, why would you want to appeal?
Well, first of all, the appeal, which will be heard by three very senior court judges.
Have you been given leave to appeal, by the way? Sorry.
No, they will be applied for, but that will be at arm's length from the club. Where we are is we're focused on the new season coming. So today we're hoping to start to close deals, bringing players in. We closed a big sponsorship deal in the last 48 hours, shirt deal. So we're moving everything forward on the club side. We must focus on that, Shane, and nothing else.
So what are your plans for, and this is all, I'm getting texts this morning, Tim, I'll be honest with you, about, so what are your plans for a new ground? Where are they?
Well, had to keep our cards very close to our chest, and the reason for that is all the counterparties that we've dealt with around the piece, shall we say, whether that was ground share or new land, have come under immense pressure from the other side. And we've had to, in effect, work very, very secretly and under the radar. It's been appalling.
How far away is it? How far away is it then from making an announcement?
Well, again, I'll make an announcement when we're good and ready, and we won't be pressured on that. And the reason we won't be pressured on that is because we want this deal to be right for the club. This club must own its own stadium. This club must access all its matchday revenues. It cannot just be a tenant in someone else's building. That's clear.
You're an experienced, intelligent, competent businessman. How far away in your gut, Tim? I'm not asking you to, make a definitive answer, but are we talking days, weeks, months, a year away from an announcement?
No. It wouldn't be a year. I think we're talking small number of months, because that's where we get to in terms of closing the land deal. The planning then becomes public, and that's when we try to manage the process. And, you hear the word, I use the words the other side, and I think that's something we need to move away from. We need to move towards healing and reconciliation. This is about a football club, it's about a community, and it's about something that's way bigger than a stadium.
Do you regret bringing the action against Coventry City Council, the judicial review now? Because this could be set to cost you a significant amount of money. The judge was fairly unequivocal in his condemnation of all of your arguments in the case, and it seems now, looking back, I mean, I know you didn't know he was going to rule like that, but looking back, it looks pretty ill-conceived. Do you have any sense of regret at all, or not?
I've been reflective, I'll give you that, Shane, and where I get to is the council stepped across a deal which could have made, or certainly put the first step on the pathway for the club being great. This club is a phenomenal club. However, it is starved of commercial revenues and will be starved for all the time that it doesn't access its own business, the money that it generates. And what happened is we put a deal on the table. That deal was right for everybody. However, for whatever reason, the council decided to go down their own pathway, which is fine. They've gone down their own path, and all that's happened is we've gotten to the same situation. We've just changed lenders. So what I said yesterday when somebody asked me what the problem was, it's easy. They've borrowed beyond all reasonable debt. And that is the problem. But I understand.
The judges...
One moment, Shane. Just one moment. Just indulge me for one moment.
Go on.
I understand why the council may feel as they do in terms of wanting to be protective of ACL. I respect that. However, all that's happened is we have created another issue which will be around for 40-plus years.
The judge painted a very different picture from the one that you tried to paint in court in his summation. You were saying that, it was the council were trying to put your company out of business, where in actual fact the judge found that your ulterior motive, if you like, was to get the stadium at a knockdown cost. Are you agreeing with what the judge is saying? Are you offended by that statement? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that statement is wrong. So if you actually look at the deal, we were looking to take down the debt and discharge the debt. What does that mean? It means that there would have been no debt in place. So the equity shareholders, which would have been the council, our future partners, and ourselves, we would have had access to a lot better business, which wasn't burdened by such a huge debt. And that could only be good for all parties. Now, for whatever reason, the council decided they didn't want to go down that route, and all you've got to go and do is look in the disclosure documents, and blind Pew could see that they were never, ever going to do a deal with Sisu. Now, the most important point now, Shane, is healing and reconciliation. This is about a football club. It's bigger than the council. It's bigger than ACL, but it's not bigger than the community.
Sorry,
community comes first.
Healing and reconciliation with whom? You and the council
have been involved.
Well, you're not going to achieve healing and reconciliation by going to the Court of Appeal, are you, Tim?
Well, there's a point of principle here and a point in law, and we are.
Which I accept, but you do speak a little bit with forked tongue, don't you? Because which one do you want? Do you want healing and reconciliation, or do you want to prove your point of principle? You can't have your cake and eat it. Which one do you want?
Actually, Shane, you do prove your point of principle, and for the football club, you do have reconciliation. So the fans come first. So my phone has melted over the last few days. All they want to do is see reconciliation. I understand that, and healing, and we're prepared to do that. However, if we feel that the judge, and again, to be clear, the evidence and submissions in court were, did not reconcile with the judgment, and we would seriously contest those findings. You can run that in parallel with moving the football club forward. It's about moving the football club forward.
A great way of moving it all forward and healing and reconciliation and getting the club back at the ground, which would be a great first step, isn't it? It's harder to be enemies with each other if you're in the same room, as it were. But the fans group Keep Cov in Cov, of course, had offered this deal to pay the rent for the Rico, in the new, sort of in the extended period while the quotes, the stadium is being built. Where are we with that? Are you going to take that up as an offer? What wouldn't that be a great first step to healing and reconciliation?
Okay, so let's just take a step back. So back in February 2013, we were discussing and offered a deal, which was a 3-year deal, a deal for the period that we built our own stadium. That deal said we would pay a League One rent. It also was about, and this is the really key bit, it's about accessing and managing our own match day revenues. And this is critical for the club, and everybody knows it, Shane.
Right.
Everybody understands financial fair play.
So
if we put a football match on, we should benefit, unsurprisingly, from all the money that is generated from that match. Now,
so the
deal. Well, one moment.
I was just going to say the short answer to this, though, Tim, is that the answer is no, isn't it? Because if you're not, and people would understand that, the answer is no, because if you're not getting revenue as you are when you play at Sixfields, then that affects you in terms of fair play.
Shane, please, let me just finish the point, which is it's not about the rent, it is about the revenues. So Mr. Orton, and I'm sure he has all the best intentions, is talking about rent. The rent is not the issue. The issue is the revenues. Now, subsequent to us talking about that deal and offering that deal, and that was a deal that we put on the table, we were filed. We were filed by the council. We lost 20 points. Now, the reason that we're looking forward to this season, right here, right now, is the fact that we're starting on 0 points, not -10. And I can tell you the training ground is buzzing because Presley and Waggett are walking around and they're building a team that's pushing for promotion, not trying to stave off relegation. We fought like tigers last year to avoid relegation. This year we're going to look up, not down.
What's the future look like? More games at Sixfields, obviously that's going to continue for another 2 years then, by what you're saying, because you've done that deal for 3 years. And then move to your new ground after that. Is that what your future looks like, do you think?
That has to be our position. Our position must be we've got to fulfil our fixtures. And that's what we'll continue to do. And my point about healing and reconciliation is, we were filed, okay? We took a -20 point hit for a liquidation, which, by the way, found nothing. It was a ridiculous ploy. But we've moved on. I suck it up. The club sucks it up. We move on. We look forward to a healing process and reconciling with all the fans and trying to move all the relationships forward. The club is bigger than any one person, but it's not bigger than the community, and we respect that.
And that includes reconciliation and healing with the council, with the city council, yeah?
By definition, Shane.
But that'll be post your appeal, presumably, or you expect them to reconcile and heal whilst you're taking them to court again?
It's not so much taking them to court, Shane. It's actually looking to a point of principle. And we're talking about the football club here. So as I said, and we have to be very clear about this, the football club is at arm's length from this legal action. We are entirely focused on the upcoming football season. We remain incredibly focused on bringing players in. We've just overhauled the training ground. We've just done a sponsorship deal, which is six-figure, which is great for our club. We're bringing in sports technology, which is akin to a Premier League club. We're looking up. We're looking forward.